Hi, this is Lisamarie Costabile for Inside the Studio with Greg Wurth, and today I'm in LA at Vintage King hanging out with Alex Oana, and Alex is the inventor of the Raven for Slate. That's pretty amazing.
Super cool.
So tell me, how did that all come to fruition?
I started out by recording on tape and, with consoles back in late 80s through the 90s. And the first time I had to make a record on Pro Tools, I remember I almost quit being an engineer. I remember the conversation with my mom. It was about 1999. And I said, if making records is going to be like this, I described how every decision I had to make was one mouse click at a time. I said, I don't think I can do this job. It was so frustrating to mix a record in Pro Tools compared to using gear you could touch.
Right.
And so it was way back then I started dreaming about other ways to interface with this really powerful computer software, right? I mean, it is infinitely powerful, but our ability to interact with it was infinitely unpowerful. And then you remember that movie in the mid-2000s called Minority Report, where
Yes.
Tom Cruise was like, catching criminals, and there were these virtual displays in front of him and everything. I think that sparked the imagination of a lot of people, and certainly I think the first time I ever touched an actual touch screen was at Epcot Center at Disney.
Oh, wow.
Disney World. Is that the one in Florida?
Yep.
But they were these big like CRTs, and they were totally inaccurate. And anyway, so the technology evolved so much. The technology evolved so much over the years. By the late 2000s, we started seeing some touchscreens, and then all of a sudden we all had one in our hands. And I met Steven Slate at this party at AES, and we had never met before. I'd seen some of his videos, and one of his products happened to be on the cover of Sound on Sound, and I personally happened to be on the cover of Pro Audio Review that month.
Okay.
And he's like, "Look, I'm on the cover of a magazine." I said, I pulled it out of my backpack. Look.
That's what happens at AES parties.
I don't think very much impresses Steven Slate, but that impressed him. And I totally, in talking with him for about 30 seconds, I got him. And one of the things about Steven is that he, when he hears a great idea, he just won't let it go.
Right.
And he's collaborated with a lot of people, like his collaboration with this French engineer and software designer named Fabrice Gabriel launched a company called Slate Digital, and my collaboration with Steven launched a company called Slate Media Technology.
Wow.
After that meeting at AES with Steven, he, and I'll get back to how the Raven exactly came about.
Okay.
This is actually getting to it.
Okay.
So after, when I met him, that sparked some more conversations. And 3 weeks, I think, after meeting him, he offered me the job of vice president of his companies. And, like no resume, no interview, just like there was something about the way that we communicated and my knowledge of products and just my broad experience as an engineer and just a creative guy. And
he has instincts.
He has really good instincts, and we just, great partnerships are often like different types of personalities, and our personalities just really worked in terms of that creative spark. Cool. Our first idea together, I sort of I hybridized an idea that Steven had come up with, and we took that to the NAMM show in 2012. That was like a month after I'd met him.
Nice.
And it was this weird combination of things that didn't feel as inventive and innovative as the Slate reputation is. And so I was just so frustrated. One day I said, Steven, this whole thing that we're doing, it doesn't feel innovative like Slate is innovative. But what would be really innovative is if we made this whole thing a touchscreen. So you could just reach out and touch your DAW. And those graphics on the screen, look at how beautiful those plugins are. And some of them are made to look exactly like hardware. And wouldn't it be, you just want to touch them.
Right.
The fact that we have to, one mouse click at a time, mix a record, it makes no sense. So that began a long, very intense 2-year journey from the moment of that idea to working with a really small, very, very dedicated, many all-nighters, late nights team to get that thing to market. In fact, from the moment I had the idea to AES show 2012 was like, I don't know, 9 months or something. It was insane.
Wow.
And but that's where the idea started, and we had some really talented people we collaborated with, and I'm just really thankful that I had that opportunity. You know, not everybody is a Steven Slate who has the resources,
right, exactly,
to say, okay, I'm going to pour hundreds of thousands of dollars. I can't tell you what, I know what the actual figures are for how much that R&D costs, and it was a lot.
Yeah, I can imagine.
It was a lot, and Steven, you know, we all gave a lot of ourselves to make the Raven come to life for people, because we had this vision of what it could do to change people's creative lives. And you know, we all poured a lot of ourselves, and Steven poured a lot of his resources into that to make it happen.
Wow, cool.
That was like 10 minutes of me talking after one simple question.
Just kept talking and talking. No, but it's an amazing idea. I mean, Greg was one of the first to get one in his studio, right?
Yeah.
Is that when you first met Greg?
I think I met Greg on the phone. It was so flattering to get a call from him. He said, yeah, so I'm creating, I think he said, I'm setting up a new Neve console, and we want to put a Raven right in the middle of it.
Is that cool? That's pretty cool.
That pretty much just melted my heart right there, because, you know, a Neve console, I mean, I'd worked on Neve consoles, you know, coming up, and that's like the thing, right?
Yep.
And the idea that something that I created would go at the center, at the heart of a Neve console, it blew my mind. And I did everything I could to help Greg make it happen, and I think that exists now, right?
Oh, yeah, totally. It happened so fast.
Yeah.
Next thing I know, you know, the console is made, and there's the Raven, and it even has, did you see it? Have you been over to the studio?
I haven't
it has
been
like
to the studio,
little claws.
I saw
really
some
cool.
pictures. It's awesome.
Yeah.
But that's, you know, Greg was one of the people who he was like a visionary who could see the potential of it. And, you know, he took a leap of faith with us, and there were a lot of people who were the early adopters who, you know, could do that with us, and went through some, you know, growing pains. But now that product is just out there, and it's in its second version, and it's alive, and it's gotten over that hump of sort of having to prove itself, and it's super rewarding.
Everyone knows Slate and the Raven, so congratulations on that.
Thanks, Lisamarie.
Didn't it win awards? I think even one year that I was at Neal.
Yeah.
What award did it win?
I haven't tracked every award, but, you know, the first one that came out, the sort of Formula One version of the smaller Raven, is the large one is called the MTX, and that's the 46-inch version. And right when we first launched it, even when it wasn't really a working product, I think we won some awards for that.
Nice.
And then eventually, I don't know if the MTI, the smaller desktop version, which is really the popular one, I don't know if that, what it's like, what's sitting on its award shelf.
I'm sure a lot of awards, I'm sure. So let's take it way back for, you know, how did you get involved in pro audio or music? I'm assuming you're a musician, and you have to start from the beginning.
Oh, man. Well, I think the cutest part of that story is when my mom, as a church organist, as an infant, I would crawl around underneath her when she was playing. And of course, organs have those pedals down there. And I would sometimes, when she was not playing, and when the pastor was giving a sermon, I'd like crawl on the pedals and make these big, loud bass notes. And then my mom would like quickly shut off the organ. So I had music in my family growing up, just a really musical family. And I remember my older sisters taking piano lessons and violin and everything, and I demanded that my mom give me piano lessons.
Right.
And I got in there, and I kind of hated it, because there's different types of learners in the world.
Right.
You know, are you a kind of a academic person who studies?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah?
No, I'm a visual.
Yeah, visual.
Very visual.
Experiential learner. Like you want to do it.
I just do it.
Right. And I'm like that too. And so, I mean, any instrument you learn, I think you need a certain amount of fundamentals,
right,
to be able to be proficient on it. And I just was so impatient with that fundamental stage. All I wanted to do was learn how to play like Iron Man on the piano. You know? And there was no one around to really show me that.
Right,
so
right.
after a few years, I had a breakdown, and I was like, Mom, I don't want to take piano anymore. And then, so I took up saxophone. And then when I got to high school, after 3 years of saxophone and marching band, which was miserable, did you ever do marching band?
I didn't. I didn't do marching band, no.
Can you imagine like marching in the heat and like
those
having...
costumes,
Yeah.
the polyester.
It's not good.
And those shiny white shoes. Did you have the shiny white shoes?
They're called spats, and they go over your shoes. They're these vinyl covers that go over your shoes, and you don't ever want to get anywhere near them. And I know you have a daughter. Don't let her get anywhere near spats.
Okay,
unless it's for a Halloween costume.
Okay.
So I got out of marching band. I got a saxophone because one day I saw after band practice was over in the middle of the school day, I saw the choir walking in. And like all the prettiest girls in the school were in the choir. I was like, that's what I'm going to join choir.
So you quit the band.
So I quit band, quit symphonic band, and they let me join the choir. And then I got into musicals. And so I never mastered an instrument. And there was another like key moment of decision in my life in terms of like, is he going to be, because I'm a recording engineer, but that decision between are you going to be a musician or a recording engineer, I was in 6th grade and my mom said, and this was at the time when the only way to listen to music on the go was a Walkman, with the cassette player with the headphones.
Okay.
So, so my mom said, okay, for your birthday, you can either have a Walkman or an electric guitar. And I looked in the Sears catalog, I looked at the electric guitar, I was like, I don't know, I kind of want that. It looks pretty cool, and Eddie Van Halen and everything. But the first time I put on headphones and listened to a Walkman, my mind just melted.
Okay.
I mean, that experience of the sound, I don't remember listening to stereo sound, beaming into my head before I put on a Walkman for the first time. And the first time I did that, it was mesmerizing. It was like a chemical change in me when I heard such music that I loved coming into my head so directly and so intimately. And I think I've been chasing that experience as an audio engineer ever since. Wow. In my mixes and in my productions, I want to give people that feeling, So fast forward through college, I was still in choir. I still did the choir thing.
Okay.
But when I saw that soundboard in the college nightclub, and I saw like the students working on it and setting up the PA.
That was your first experience of seeing.
Well, I in high school I'd seen like the DJ setting up the gear, and I knew there were amps and speakers and the graphic EQ. I was a master of the graphic EQ, even back in like if you had one in your car in the '80s, or if, like and the DJ rig for the high school PA, they had one, and I would spend time going from the dance floor at our high school mixers back to the where the DJ was, and I made friends with him so I could like be sure to he would let me tweak the EQ, the graphic EQ, so it would sound as good as it could out there. The other kids were kind of focusing on like which girl they could dance with, but I was like, does the EQ in the room sound good? So by the time I got to college and I saw these parts coming together, like here's a mixing board, here's the speakers, it just all made sense to me. Okay. And I actually got a job on campus mixing the college bands, just like the guys down the hall. And speaking of which, my roommate joined a band with my other friends down the hall, and they were in this really popular campus band. And then I started doing their sound, and we started touring around, and then I was like, well, we should record some of this. So we got the keys to the campus nightclub and went in on the PV mixer, which is not a very good mixer, although they're kind of amazing in a way because, for like a very little bit of money, they give you a ton of channels and all this stuff, and one reverb unit and a cassette deck that I borrowed from my neighbor because it was like one of the better ones. I made my first recording, and that recording stands up to this day. I mean, I can play back parts of it. I'm like, oh God, I wish I would have scooped out a little bit of more low mids on that lead vocal. But man, it still sounds. So I think I just had a knack for it, and like some people have a knack for just diving into an instrument, or maybe you're a painter or a graphic designer, but. So even though I had, the opportunity to take piano and study saxophone, and I maintained my singing, but I just had to me, engineering and messing with microphones and mixing, that was never ever work to me. It was so and remains to be just natural and just like it's a world I lose myself in. And of course then if you make something great, you can sit back and listen to it and you can,
make changes, keep going over and over.
Well, yeah,
or run off 15 mixes, like some people do.
That's what we do now, yeah, and that's the other problem with the computer. But yeah.
So, did you go to school for that? Did you go to a recording school, or?
So I went to a regular college. I went to just a college where you get a liberal arts degree, and I actually ended up, fortunately, doing this kind of hybrid thing where they let me study. I studied some physics related to sound, but it was all for me about like recording, and engineering. Wow. And then I studied poetry, which was related to lyrics.
Okay.
And what else did I studied some kind of like video production or something like that. But really, it was like an English degree with these other like things sprinkled in there. So no, I have a Bachelor of Arts, and it's interesting because I have a couple of little kids, and they're 6 and 8 years old, and I think about what should I, how would I counsel them for should they go to school, like.
Right, exactly.
I'm watching their passions develop. Like, let's say one of them develops a passion for something, and would I encourage them to go to college for that? Would I?
Tell the audience. I'm sure we have a lot of fans out there. Do you recommend going to school for audio engineering, or?
Well, that's the thing. I think you need to follow your passion for sure. Going back to studying. Here's what's important. Okay. Let me make this a little bit more succinct. I think it's really, really important to be a master of something, and you have to throw yourself into that. There's this concept of the 10,000 hours. Once you have your 10,000 hours under your belt, then you are a master of it. And then you can really start to express yourself with that or do something with that. And whether you get that 10,000 hours through school, which you probably won't unless you're like going to medical school. School, I think the best part about school actually is the network aspect of it.
Right, okay.
You're going to meet people, your peers, your students who you're going to end up collaborating with. Maybe there's another program there that's like
especially in a larger market like LA or Boston or New York.
And that brings me to the second point, which is, so if you're, number one thing is the network that you develop in school, and the other thing is where are you? So I was in Minneapolis when I came out of school, and that was an amazing place to make music. But I kind of always had my mind set on the West Coast, LA or New York, East Coast, and in some ways I wish I would have moved to LA right away because I would have started building my network there right away. Okay. So I would advise anybody out there listening, wondering and watching whether they should go to school or not. Make that decision based on where you want to be, where you see yourself ending up. And if you imagine you want to take advantage of opportunities in LA or Nashville or New York, go to school there or move there as young as you can, because one thing about the younger you are, the more energy you have, the more willing you are to like put in all-nighters, the less responsibility you have. You can you can just work nonstop and really build a career.
Cool. And so as far as musically, are you in a band now, or we talked a little bit about it?
Yeah, so I was in a band in Minneapolis, a really cool thing with I had a recording studio / house, and that was like the way to make that whole thing affordable. And some of my roommates and I were in a band together called Vicious. And if you're on Spotify if you're on Spotify, check out this album by Vicious. I can't even remember the name of it, but it's got this blue cover and there's a guy in the cover, and it's more like an EP, but it's some really cool stuff, and it never really saw the light of day. And that's actually one thing that was frustrating about being in Minneapolis. It seemed like, and a reason why I wanted to move to LA, because it just seemed like there was a glass ceiling there. Like only so much would come out of Minneapolis, and I felt like the projects I didn't get the exposure that they might have had we been in another market. But I started engineering and producing during college, and then right out of college, and that's been like my main music thing. Like I've been fortunate that some of the people that I've worked with have let me co-write with them. Not that much, but on a few things. I help with lyrics, I help with arrangements. So normal producer stuff, like trying to get the right people in the right room and set the right atmosphere. But really, what turns me on is sound. Sound itself, and it can happen in so many different ways. Sometimes it's the people and their feel together, like that drummer plus that bass player. But sometimes it's like, how does that drum kit sound in this room, and what is it? Because it's all, in the end, really the way most of us experience music is through speakers, really, like more even than live. And so as an engineer, it's like, how do you get some emotion to translate through the speakers?
Right.
And I think it's such a musical process as a recording engineer.
Yeah. Is that how you segued to Vintage King? And here we are in Vintage King.
Yeah, so Vintage King was kind enough to let us use the LA showroom to
shoot this,
yeah. And Vintage King is such a great company because, like me, the people that would be helping you if you ever wanted to buy equipment or research equipment, they're recording engineers, they're producers, they're musicians, and I'm just so passionate about finding the right microphone, for example.
Right.
I love it when a customer of mine comes down and they're like, I'm starting a new album and I'm trying to find the right mic for my voice. It's like finding the right instrument for an instrumentalist. It's such a personal thing.
So your major passion is?
I mean, it's still sound, and Vintage King is a very very demanding job. I'm constantly helping other engineers and producers, whether they're in like a bedroom or like big time, big name type of person, get their studio together and get that perfect piece of gear. But whenever I can, I'm mixing my own projects and collaborating with other people. I'm fortunate that some folks back from Minneapolis, where I came up, I had a studio there for a decade in Minneapolis, and made just like my most amazing friends for life. And sometimes people from my network there will send me records to mix, and I still call them records. And I've made some really great collaborations out here in LA, so I've got my own mixing setup at home. And I think it's so liberating, actually, that on my laptop, I've got this whole universe, and that kind of brings us back to the Raven a little bit. It's like you've got this universe in your computer and all this power, and I love analog gear, and I want to track on analog gear, and if I can mix on analog gear, I do. But the flexibility of like, I can mix on my kitchen counter with my laptop and like the little 1/8" jack out, and I can go in my car. I've done that before. I've taken my laptop, the Pro Tools session running in the iLock, and I plug into my car stereo. This is how it sounds in the car.
Nice.
I even did my friend Jeremy Robinson, who I'm producing some stuff with right now. We had this idea for an edit, and for some reason we had to he had locked his keys in the car, so we were at my house in Culver City, and and I said, but we got to do this edit. We got to take care of this right now. So he had his laptop with Logic on it, and as I'm driving, he's sitting in the passenger seat with his 1/8" jack plugged into my car stereo, and he was performing the edit along the 405 going 70 miles per hour. I just thought that was so cool. I mean, that technology can let us do that. I think it's an amazing world. And so I'm not, whether it's analog or digital, I think it's all good. It's a tool, What do you do with it? I'm good with good tools,
What do you do with it? Well, that we can segue into Greg now, because Greg is here, and you want to sit down and talk with Greg.
There are so
Go
much
shopping
cool,
in this gorgeous studio at Vintage King. But thank you so much for hanging out.
Thanks,
we really got to
Thank you.
get to know you. So you can check out Alex on pretty much all the social media outlets. And thank you so much. And this is Lisamarie Costabile for Inside the Studio with Greg Wurth.